So I want you to picture this scene for a second. It's just before dawn.
Okay, early morning.
Yeah, super early. You're standing in this really sunny, cheerful kitchen in Amarillo, Texas. And you are meticulously cutting Crisco into flour. Like doing it until it feels exactly like powdered velvet.
Oh, wow, that is specific.
Right. And then you fry up a whole pan of bacon.
Yeah.
You cook 2 eggs sunny side up, right in the left. Yeah. The woman cooking this breakfast is making it for her volatile, abusive husband. And she's doing it because right after he eats those eggs and walks out the door for his morning jog, she's going to reach under her kitchen sink.
Oh, my God.
She's going to dig out a stolen, unregistered .45 caliber revolver that used to belong to her grandfather. She puts it in a plastic Target bag, hikes out into the local woods, and she's going to assassinate him.
Wow. The contrast there is just absolutely staggering.
It's completely jarring.
You have this ultimate symbol of nurturing domesticity, right?
Yeah.
Just pressed directly up against premeditated lethal violence.
Exactly. And welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. We actually created this specifically for you.
We did.
Today, our mission is to step directly into that staggering contrast. We're looking at a stack of incredibly intense source material. Specifically, we're exploring the first 7 chapters of Joshilyn Jackson's novel, Backseat Saints.
And we should be clear, we aren't just summarizing a thriller today.
No, definitely not. We're going to forensically examine the psychology of trauma. We're going to look at the intense compartmentalization of human identity and explore the absolute chilling, desperate lengths a person will go to when they're trying to reclaim their own life from a hostage situation.
What is truly fascinating about the material we have is how it forces us to confront a very uncomfortable truth, which is that survival isn't always pretty.
It's rarely clean.
Right. It almost never follows a logical, linear trajectory. We're going to be dissecting the mind of someone who has been pushed to the absolute psychological brink.
Yeah, we really need to examine the complex coping mechanisms that keep her alive day to day. And crucially, we need to analyze the exact moment those mechanisms shatter.
So let's unpack this protagonist right from the jump.
Let's do it.
Because we have to establish the central architecture of her identity to even begin to understand her.
Right, so as she's making this breakfast, she actually thinks to herself, she says, "Baby, I'm scared I might blow holes in you later, but look, I made you the naughty eggs."
That line is so haunting.
How does a human brain hold those two realities at the exact same time? In the source text, she describes herself as being built like a set of Russian nesting dolls.
I love that analogy.
On the outside, she's Ro Grande. Ro is the perfect, pretty, pie-baking Texas housewife. She wears like pastel skirts and ballet flats.
Very traditional.
Super traditional. She keeps a spotless house, and her entire existence is dedicated to managing her husband Tom's volatile moods.
But we really need to understand that Ro Grande is not a real person.
No.
Ro is a construct. She's a highly specialized piece of psychological armor.
Exactly. Because buried deep inside that pastel shell, in the absolute meat of her, is the inner nesting doll. Her real name is Rose Mae Lolley.
Rose Mae.
Yeah, Rose Mae is a feral, deeply traumatized girl from Alabama. Rose Mae is the one who absorbs the physical beatings. And in her own twisted internal logic, Rose Mae is the one who somehow deserves to be hit.
If we connect this to the broader mechanics of trauma psychology, this is a profound example of dissociation and compartmentalization. It's extreme, but it's very real.
Can you break that down a bit without getting too clinical, I mean?
Sure. So when a person, especially a young person, which we'll discover, is when Rose Mae's trauma actually began, is subjected to inescapable, overwhelming abuse. The human mind does something incredible.
It splits.
It fragments to protect the core self. Imagine a submarine taking on water. It seals off certain bulkheads to keep the whole ship from sinking.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So Ro is the sealed-off bulkhead that interacts with the real world.
Precisely. Ro is the mask of absolute compliance. She is the adaptation necessary to function in a highly dangerous environment without triggering the predator.
And Rose Mae.
Rose Mae, on the other hand, is the repository. She holds all the pain, the anger, the visceral terror, and the shame.
Wow.
By convincing herself that Rose Mae is a separate, bad entity who somehow brings the violence upon herself, Ro can maintain the illusion that her daily life is somewhat normal. It gives her a modicum of control.
Like, if I just bake the perfect pie, I am safe. And if I get hit, well, that's because Rose Mae let the crust burn.
Exactly. That's the logic.
It's a survival mechanism that clearly works for years, until it suddenly doesn't. And what fascinates me, looking at these notes, is what actually shatters that illusion.
Right. What sets her off?
Because what finally pushes Roe to pack that heavy gun into a plastic bag and head to Wildcat Bluff isn't a fresh beating. It's a completely random, bizarre catalyst at an airport.
The inciting incident often comes from entirely outside the closed system of the abuse. It's usually a destabilizing external force.
Yeah, so let's look at this fateful Tuesday at the Amarillo airport. Roe is just there, doing a favor for her sweet, elderly neighbor, Mrs. Fancy.
Just running an errand?
Exactly. She's helping her check in this giant suitcase full of baby clothes for her daughter's new child. Roe is just trying to be a good neighbor. But while she's standing there in the terminal, she locks eyes with a woman she describes as an airport gypsy.
It's a chance encounter that fundamentally ruptures her carefully constructed reality.
Completely shatters it. This woman is swathed in scarves. She has silver-stained fingers. And she looks at Roe as if Roe's skin is made of transparent glass.
That's terrifying.
She basically physically intercepts Roe, sits her down at a table in the food court, and gives her a 3-card tarot reading. And the details of this reading are chillingly specific.
We need to analyze those specific cards because the author uses them as the structural framework for Roe's entire psychological unraveling.
Let's do it. What's the first card?
The first card drawn, representing her past, is the Tower. Visually, this card depicts a spindly stone tower that has been struck by lightning.
Oh, it's on fire.
It's on fire, people are falling from the windows, but there is one girl left behind, trapped in the highest window. The gypsy looks at Roe and tells her this represents a massive, foundational loss in her past, a loss that continues to actively haunt her.
And Roe's immediate reaction is pure defense. She tries to deflect. She claims the loss the card is talking about must be her high school boyfriend, Jim Beverly, who disappeared years ago.
But the gypsy doesn't buy it.
Not at all. She just waves that away. She pulls the second card, for the present, is the Two of Swords. It shows a blindfolded woman crossing 2 long, heavy swords over her chest, and she's standing in front of a jagged, red, watery background.
That imagery is very aggressive.
Right, and the gypsy doesn't mince words. She explicitly states that this card stinks of violence. She calls it a marriage made of swords.
Wow.
And then, in this shocking violation of personal space, the gypsy reaches under the table and presses her thumb hard directly onto one of Roe's fresh, hidden bruises, just to prove she knows exactly what Roe is hiding.
That physical touch is a critical moment. It bypasses the Roe Grandee mask entirely.
It's so invasive.
It's a profound violation of boundaries, yes, but in a psychological sense, it strips away the deniability Roe relies on to survive, which leads directly to the final, most terrifying card, the future, the Hanged Man.
And this card sounds like a nightmare. It shows a man wearing a snarling wolf's head helmet, hanging upside down by one ankle from a tree, with his hands bound tight by thorny vines.
Now, in traditional tarot, many readers interpret the Hanged Man quite mildly.
Really? Like what?
They might say it represents change or a need for an altered perspective or simply a pause in action. But the gypsy insists on a much darker, literal interpretation.
Of course she does.
She tells Roe that given her specific configuration, a past defined by foundational abandonment and a present defined by extreme, hidden violence, this card means one thing: chain or die. It is a death card.
The gypsy leans in, looks Roe dead in the eye, and says, "It's him or you.
Yeah.
Choose him." Meaning, you have to kill your husband or your husband is going to kill you.
That's heavy.
And the wildest part of this isn't the reading itself, it's Roe's reaction.
Yeah.
She believes this woman to the marrow of her ill-mended bones.
She accepts it completely.
Roe admits in her internal monologue that she has known this truth for a long time. But hearing it spoken aloud by a stranger rings like church bells in her head. It forces her hand to action.
This raises a very important question for us to dissect. How do we interpret the function of this tarot reading within the narrative?
What do you mean?
Are we supposed to believe the cards possessed some mystical predictive power that actually saw her future?
Okay, I have to push back hard on the idea of any actual magic happening here. When I read through these notes, to me, the tarot reading acts purely as a psychological mirror.
I agree completely.
The cards didn't predict some mystical, unavoidable future. They just gave Roe the explicit permission to acknowledge the terrifying reality she was already living in, but was actively repressing.
Right.
I mean, we know from the text that Tom had already explicitly threatened to kill her if she ever tried to leave him. The gypsy didn't perform magic. She merely articulated the inevitable mathematical outcome of the path Roe was already walking.
Your interpretation aligns perfectly with therapeutic concepts of projection and external validation. The gypsy acts as a disruptive truth teller.
Because Rose's brain was doing backflips to ignore it.
The human brain is incredibly adept at ignoring what it cannot bear to face. The devil breakfasts, the meticulously clean house, the pastel skirts, these are all tools of cognitive dissonance.
Rose is constantly telling herself, things are fine, I have a good wife, I am safe.
Yes. The gypsy, acting as an external, objective voice, shatters that dissonance. She points directly to the lethal trajectory of the abuse. She takes the quiet, suppressed thought in Rose's head that he is going to kill her and basically shouts it out loud.
Which brings us to the immediate, desperate action Rose takes. The ambush at Wildcat Bluff. The juxtaposition of her domestic life and what she does next is so jarring.
It really is a massive shift.
To understand how she misses her shot, we have to look closely at the scene in the woods. Rose has hiked off the main jogging trail. She's stepping incredibly carefully on rocks to leave no footprints.
She's planning it perfectly.
She is dealing with the agonizing, sharp pain of 4 fist-sized bruises running straight down her spine from a recent beating. She climbs down into a dry drainage ditch covered by ground ivy, which gives her a perfect, sniper-like line of sight to the hairpin curve where she knows Tom will jog past.
The sensory details the author employs here are vital for understanding her mental state. She is highly focused, yet incredibly fragmented.
Right. She has the 2 pieces of her Poppy's stolen, unregistered .45 caliber revolver rattling around in a cheap plastic target bag. She pulls them out and pieces the gun together, the heavy metal snaking into place.
And she's not alone, right?
No. And she realizes she has an audience. There's a small, burrowing owl sitting on a root just a few feet away, swiveling its head to watch her.
The owl is a brilliant narrative device. It functions as a silent, impartial witness to her descent into lethal violence. It highlights her profound isolation. She cannot tell anyone what she is doing. Her only confidant is a wild bird.
And what is she doing while she waits for her abuser to run by? She is silently reciting the Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
That's fascinating.
She actually rationalizes this by saying she's getting a jump start on the 1,000 rosaries she knows she'll have to say to get her soul clean after committing a mortal sin. She is literally pre-repenting for murder.
It shows how deeply her religious upbringing is ingrained in her trauma response.
But then, she feels the physical vibrations of Tom's heavy, pounding run hitting the dirt path. She smells his specific scent wafting ahead of him on the wind. She sights down the barrel, aiming directly at the center of his chest as he rounds the curve.
This is the critical juncture. She has him dead to rights. She has the weapon, the motive, and the opportunity, and yet this is the moment of complete psychological paralysis.
She freezes, completely locks up. Her internal monologue screams that she's spineless enough to let him kill her. Her eyes squeeze shut, the heavy gun droops, pointing at nothing.
She can't look.
She pulls the trigger twice, completely blind, tears streaming down her face. And when the ringing stops and she opens her eyes, Tom is standing there completely unhurt. He's screaming at her to hold her fire. Because she didn't hit Tom, she hit Gretel.
Gretel, her beloved dog.
Yes, this fat, khaki-colored mutt she rescued from the pound. The only creature in her house that shows her affection. The dog who literally circles her and groans in sympathy whenever she cries after a beating.
That's devastating.
Tom had brought the dog on his morning run. Rose has shot her own dog.
This specific sequence requires deep analysis. We have to ask, why does she miss? Is it simply a lack of nerve, a fear of the recoil, or is it something much more profoundly rooted in her psychological conditioning?
See, that's exactly what I'm struggling with looking at the material. Is she paralyzed by some twisted form of love for the man she makes breakfast for? Or is it the ultimate tragic conditioning of an abused spouse who literally cannot execute her own liberation even when her life depends on it?
It is absolutely the latter, and it is heavily compounded by the internal division we discussed earlier, the Russian nesting dolls.
Oh, right, because she's still Rose in that moment.
Exactly. In that drainage ditch, holding that gun, she is still predominantly Rose Grandee. Think about the purpose of Rose Grandee. Rose is the construct designed specifically and exclusively to submit to Tom.
To keep the peace at all costs.
She was built to appease him, to survive him, by never, ever fighting back. If Rose fights back, the violence escalates. Therefore, Rose cannot pull the trigger on her abuser. Her entire psychological programming, her neurological wiring, forbids it.
So her brain basically short circuits.
When she sees him, her amygdala, the fear center of the brain, hijacks her prefrontal cortex, which controls logical decision-making. Her hands shake, her vision blurs, her eyes close involuntarily. She physically cannot look at him and execute him because Ro is programmed to protect Tom's ego at all costs.
She's basically fighting her own survival instinct, which has been warped to mean keeping Tom happy equals staying alive.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But then, the situation on the ground shifts rapidly. The gunshot rings out, the owl flies off. Gretel is howling in agonizing pain on the trail, and Tom realizes he is actively being fired upon from the ditch.
And he doesn't retreat.
He doesn't run away at all. He charges toward the ditch to drag the shooter out.
And this is where we must notice the profound psychological shift that occurs within the protagonist in that split second. The threat environment has changed.
Yes. The text is so explicit here. It says, in the next frame, I was Rose Mae again. The separation I'd felt earlier ended, and there was no girl inside a girl. I was Rose.
The mask drops entirely.
Yeah, instantly. Her hands become rock steady. She stops crying, she squinches one eye shut, and aims for a clean headshot. She fires twice more.
But she misses again.
Now, she misses again because she's not a trained marksman, but the bullets whine so close to Tom's ear that he physically dives into the trees for cover. It takes the feral, traumatized Rose Mae personality to finally steady the gun, because Rose Mae understands violence.
Rose Mae is the one who takes the beatings, so she's the one capable of giving them back.
Precisely. Rose Mae is the fighter. She is the cornered animal. But the narrative complicates things even further, subverting our expectations of how both the victim and the abuser should act in this scenario.
Right, because what happens next is incredibly messy.
Ro is tracking Tom from the ditch. She's waiting for a clear shot so she can finally finish him and then rush out to save her bleeding dog. But Tom doesn't run away down the trail, and he doesn't try to flank her through the woods to attack her blind spot.
What does he do?
Instead, he steps back out onto the open trail, completely exposing himself to a shooter he thinks is a stranger. He scoops up the 50-pound bleeding, howling dog in his arms, and he runs away in a serpentine pattern, actively risking his own life to save Gretel.
And what is Rose's reaction to witnessing this?
She tracks him through the sights of the gun. She feels the absolute power of having his life in her hands. But she doesn't pull the trigger.
She lets him go.
She watches this man, who beats her mercilessly, risk his own hide for a dog she knows he doesn't even like. He's only doing it because the dog belongs to Ro. And as she watches him run, she thinks to herself, it was the most romantic thing that I had ever seen.
That word, romantic.
She drops the heavy gun into the dirt and just weeps, crying for her bleeding dog and what she calls her own spineless love.
This reaction, finding a moment of perceived heroism, deeply romantic, immediately after actively attempting to murder the man, it really highlights the deeply twisted, contradictory nature of a trauma bond.
Okay, stop right there. Explain a trauma bond to me, because throwing the word romantic in there feels insane to a healthy brain.
It does seem irrational from the outside, but it is a well-documented survival mechanism. A trauma bond is a phenomenon where the victim forms a profound, intensely loyal emotional attachment to their abuser.
How does that even form, though?
This bond is forged and reinforced by unpredictable cycles of extreme violence or emotional abuse, which are then followed by periods of intense affection, apologies, or in this specific case, perceived gallantry.
So it's the contrast.
Exactly. The brain becomes addicted to the relief that follows the terror. When Tom risks his life to save the dog, it violently confuses Rose's narrative.
Right, because he's supposed to be the monster she has to kill.
Exactly. But suddenly, he is also the brave, selfless man saving her beloved pet. This creates a massive cognitive dissonance. Her brain cannot reconcile the man who cracks her ribs with the man who dodges bullets for her dog.
And that freezes her.
This emotional confusion paralyzes her far more effectively than any physical restraint he could have used. It reinforces the trauma bond because it gives her a sliver of evidence that there is good in him, which in her mind justifies her inability to leave.
It's incredibly messy and frustrating to watch from the outside. To understand why a woman misses her abuser with a .45 and then immediately swoons over him feeling romantic, we really have to look at the environment that cultivated this dynamic.
Right, because this didn't start overnight.
This marriage didn't just sprout out of nowhere.
Right.
We have to examine the toxic ecosystem of the Grandee family.
We must transition from the acute incident in the woods to the chronic environment of her daily life. The architecture of an abusive marriage does not exist in a vacuum.
It never does.
It is almost always heavily supported, normalized, and even encouraged by the surrounding familial structure.
Let's unpack the patriarch, Joe Grandee, Tom's father, because Reading about Joe is just suffocating. He owns Grand Guns, which is this successful chain of local gun stores.
He's the boss.
He's the boss, and he's controlling. He is casually and overtly racist, and he intentionally underpays his eldest son, Tom. He refuses to pay Tom what he's worth, keeping him financially dependent and constantly seeking approval.
It's a power play.
But the absolute worst part of Joe is how he treats Ro. Ro is forced to work the cash register at the main store for minimum wage, and Joe constantly leers at her. He makes these vile, inappropriate comments.
He creates a deeply hostile environment.
He tells her to unbutton her blouse a little lower to help business. He literally elbows his son, Tom, and says Ro could outsell the best floor man if she just got up from behind the counter in a tight skirt.
Joe Grandy's behavior is not just gross. It is deeply instrumental in maintaining the cycle of abuse between Tom and Ro.
How so? Because it seems like Joe is just a separate problem, but like he's just a creepy father-in-law.
No, it's entirely interconnected. Joe constantly undermines Tom's masculinity, his competence, and his financial independence. This creates a deep well of humiliation and rage within Tom.
And Tom can't take it out on Joe.
Precisely. Tom cannot express that rage toward his father because Joe holds the purse strings and the power, so that rage is displaced. It travels down the hierarchy and is unleashed onto the safest target, Ro.
Wow.
Furthermore, Joe's overt sexualization of Ro in front of Tom does something very specific. It establishes Ro not as an autonomous human being or even a respected wife, but as a commodity.
Like property.
Yes, she becomes a piece of property and a point of competition between the two men.
It's disgusting. And we see the ripple effects of this toxic dynamic immediately after the botched shooting. Let's look at the aftermath. Rose speeds home in Mrs. Fancy's borrowed car. She hides the gun in a shoebox under some vintage red pumps in her closet.
She barely makes it back.
She manages to scrub the dirt off herself and change clothes just minutes before Tom arrives home from the vet. He walks in with his parents and his brother Larry. Gretel the dog survives, but they had to amputate her front leg.
And this triggers a very confusing period for her.
Yeah. What follows is what the notes call a bizarre honeymoon phase. Ro is flooded with overwhelming guilt for having shot and maimed her own dog, and confusingly, she is flooded with relief that her husband isn't dead.
The cognitive dissonance again.
So she throws herself entirely, like 110%, into the perfect wife role to soothe her own agonizing conscience.
This reaction initiates a very specific, highly recognizable phase in the cycle of domestic abuse.
She starts cooking these massive, heavy dinners every single night. Man food, she calls it. We are talking pork roasts, heavy turkey pot pies, stuffed flank steak, meatloaf heavily spiced with sage.
She's intentionally weighing him down.
Exactly. She's actively trying to make Tomology full and calm.
Yeah.
She keeps the house absolutely spotless. They watch college football together. They play gin rummy in the evenings. They have enthusiastic, performative cheerleader sex. They end up living in this 6-week bubble of absolute domestic bliss. Tom doesn't raise his voice once.
But as analysts of this text, we must critically evaluate this bliss. It is fundamentally an illusion.
I would argue it's worse than an illusion. I look at this and I think, it's like living on the slopes of a dormant volcano and mistaking the lack of eruptions for safety.
That's a great analogy.
The magma is still boiling right under the surface. But my question is, isn't Ro actively manipulating this piece? When I read this, she doesn't seem like just a passive, helpless victim sitting around waiting to be hit.
Not at all.
She is strategically deploying heavy food, sex, and a pristine environment to manage his moods. She is playing an incredibly exhaustive game of psychological defense.
You are absolutely right, and it is crucial to recognize the victim's agency within the trauma cycle. She is engaged in what we call hypervigilant threat mitigation.
Hypervigilant threat mitigation. What does that look like in practice?
Let me explain that concept simply. Imagine living in a room with a sleeping tiger. Every single breath you take, every step you make, the clothes you wear, the food you cook it, is all calculated entirely around one goal. Do not wake the tiger.
And that's exhausting.
That is hypervigilance. The honeymoon phase in abusive dynamics is rarely a period of genuine peace or reconciliation. Rather, it is the tension-building phase in disguise.
So it's like a pressure valve releasing just enough steam so the boiler doesn't explode today.
Exactly. The abuser is temporarily sated by the absolute subservience, and the victim is working overtime, exhausting herself to maintain that precarious equilibrium. The peace is contingent entirely upon Rose's flawless performance of submission.
And the extreme fragility of this piece is violently exposed through the subsequent negotiation over her own body.
Yes. This is where the grandee family dynamics merge with Rose's bodily autonomy in the most toxic, horrifying way possible.
Tom goes to his father because he wants a raise at the gun store. He thinks he's earned it. But Joe Grandee explicitly ties Tom's salary to Rose's reproductive system.
It's just incredible overreach.
Joe demands a grandchild to carry on the family name. So Tom comes home from work and cheerfully tells Rose the deal his father offered. He says, when you get pregnant, then my salary moves up halfway toward what I want. After the baby is born, we get the other half.
It is the ultimate objectification. Rose's uterus is literally being used as a bargaining chip in a financial power struggle between a father and a son.
And the craziest part is that Tom thinks this is a perfectly fair, logical compromise. He sits there eating his heavy dinner and asks Rose, why don't we have a baby? He thinks it's a great idea.
But Rose has a secret.
But Rose is secretly on the birth control pill. She recognizes with crystal clarity that bringing a child into this violent, unpredictable home is a profound moral sin.
So what does she tell him?
She tells Tom she refuses to raise an unbaptized child, using her Catholicism as a shield because she knows Tom hates her religion but respects stubbornness.
It's a very calculated excuse.
But her internal monologue reveals the absolute truth. She considers lying about being on the pill the lesser sin compared to knowingly subjecting an innocent child to Tom's heavy fists.
This secret act of rebellion, taking her birth control pill every day and hiding, is a vital assertion of control. In a life where she controls nothing, not even the safety of her own ribs, preventing a pregnancy is one of the few hard boundaries she has managed to maintain.
It's her only leverage.
However, we must analyze Tom's motivation here. His sudden desire for a baby isn't driven by a sudden, warming paternal instinct.
No, he doesn't care about being a dad at all.
Exactly. It's about securing his salary, yes, but deeper than that, it's about proving his masculinity to his domineering father. And most insidiously, it is about exerting ultimate, inescapable control over Rose by trapping her permanently with a child.
Because leaving is so much harder with a baby.
A child makes leaving exponentially more difficult for an abused spouse.
Which makes total terrifying sense. But listening to all of this, recognizing this constant need to play defense, to constantly manage the egos and the violence of abusive men, it strikes me that Rose didn't learn these skills in Amarillo, Texas.
No, she brought them with her.
This isn't a new survival tactic she picked up after the wedding. This is a highly refined skill she honed years ago as a waitress. Which brings us to a crucial transition. We have to look at the actual origin story of her split identity to understand how she got here.
To understand the genesis of the Rose mask, we have to examine the specific environment that necessitated its creation. We have to look at how they met.
Let's go back 7 years in the narrative. Let's look at the diner meet cute. And I use the term meet cute with heavy irony here.
It is definitely not a rom-com.
Rose is a 21-year-old runaway. She's been drifting from town to town entirely alone, and she's currently working a brutal 3 a.m. shift at Duff's Diner in Kingsville, Texas. She wears a retro pink 50s uniform with a tiny, ridiculous apron.
The uniform itself is a kind of mask.
And she wears a psychological mask of extreme, bubbly, bulletproof perkiness. She intentionally uses this sweet exterior to secure tips and to stay safe, because she has absolutely no actual safe space in her life. She lives in a dank, rented room with a broken lock, where her alcoholic landlady barges in constantly.
The perky waitress persona is an armor constructed entirely from compliance and performative femininity. It is a defense mechanism designed to deflect aggression and elicit protective, positive responses from the men she serves in the middle of the night.
But then Tom Grandee walks into the diner. He's on a double date with some college kids from the local A&M campus. He's a strong side safety on the football team. He's big, meaty, incredibly confident. He sits in Rose's section, and he actually looks at her face.
He sees her.
He doesn't just look at her body in the pink uniform. He talks to her like a person. But his date, a girl Rose refers to internally as Bangs, because of her highly teased hair, hates Rose immediately.
It's an instant clash.
Bangs represents everything Rose is not. She is secure, wealthy, and cruel. Bangs is condescending, she's rude, and she intentionally turns her coffee mug over, spilling it, and then berates Rose loudly for not knowing she wanted hot cocoa instead.
Bangs represents the privileged, secure life that Rose has been completely denied. The interaction is a stark class conflict. Bangs utilizes her position of power as the paying customer and the legitimate date to publicly humiliate the highly vulnerable waitress.
And it pushes Rose too far. The exhaustion, the fear, the humiliation, the perky mask finally slips. Rose goes back behind the counter, hidden from the booth's line of sight, and as she mixes the Swiss Miss hot cocoa with boiling water, she purposefully, maliciously spits a thick, heavy wad of saliva right into the mug.
It's a primal reaction.
And she stirs it in. The text describes her smiling an ugly, genuine smile showing her back teeth. It's an act of pure vengeance. But when she looks up from the mug, Tom Grandee has left the booth.
He followed her.
He is leaning over the diner counter. He has witnessed the entire thing.
This is the pivotal moment of exposure. He sees the feral Rose Mae hiding beneath the robe exterior.
He sees the dark, vindictive girl from Alabama. And what does he do? He doesn't report her to a manager to get her fired. He doesn't go back and warn his date.
This part is so wild.
He takes the mug of tainted cocoa back to the table. He intercepts it before Bangs can take a sip. He locks intense, unblinking eye contact with Roe across the diner, and he drinks the spit himself.
He just consumes it.
He drinks it down, scalding hot, without ever breaking eye contact.
It is an incredibly potent, profoundly disturbing moment of connection.
I mean, I have to stop and ask you about this, because this is wild. Usually a meet-cute in a romance story is dropping textbooks in a school hallway or bumping hands reaching for the same apple at the grocery store. Here, the foundational moment of their relationship is shared malice.
It's built on a transgression.
It is an act of complicity and a gross violation. Did Tom actually fall in love with Roe, the sweet waitress, or did he fall in love with the feral Rose Mae who spits in cups?
He fell in love with the darkness he recognized within her. We have to look at Tom's psychology here. Tom is a man who carries his own massive, barely suppressed rage.
From his dad.
A rage cultivated by his father, which we later see fully unleashed. When he sees Rose Mae spit in the cup, he identifies a kindred spirit. He sees someone who understands malice, vengeance, and hidden anger. But crucially, and this is the dark core of their dynamic, he also recognizes a bad girl that he will later feel entirely justified in punishing.
Wow. So he sees her sin and decides he can be her judge and executioner down the line.
Exactly. By drinking the spit, he is accepting her darkness, yes, but he's fundamentally asserting dominance over it. He consumes her malice, he takes her power.
That's incredibly twisted.
This single moment at the diner seals their fate because it establishes the foundational dynamic of their entire marriage, a shared, secret understanding of violence and transgression, masked by a thin veneer of societal normalcy.
And she just leans into it.
Roe compartmentalizes her trauma to survive this dynamic. Roe becomes the good wife who tries desperately to please him. Rose Mae is the girl who spits in cups, and therefore, in her warped logic, deserves the broken ribs Tom administers.
It all feeds back into that original split.
It's a closed psychological loop of justification that protects her core self from the shattering reality that no one, no matter what they've done, deserves abuse.
That is so incredibly dark, but it makes perfect tragic sense of their twisted bond. But we have to ask, where was that feral girl born? Where did Rose Mae come from before she put on the pink diner uniform?
We have to look back even further.
To understand the darkness that Tom recognized, we had to dig deep into the trauma of her childhood in Fruiton, Alabama. We have to look at the two defining figures of her past, the mother who left and the boy who stayed.
We are now returning to the foundational trauma, the tower card from her tarot reading.
Exactly. Let's go back to that massive twist at the airport, because it recontextualizes everything.
Yeah.
The gypsy who gave Roe the chilling tarot reading, the woman who confidently told her she must kill or be killed, is actually Roe's mother.
It's a brilliant reveal.
The very mother who abandoned her 20 years ago when Roe was just an 8-year-old child.
It completely flips the narrative of the encounter. The gypsy wasn't a random mystic channeling the universe. She was a ghost from the past, delivering a highly specific, informed warning based on her own knowledge of what domestic violence looks like.
And how Roe figures this out is a brilliant piece of detective work, driven entirely by subconscious muscle memory. During the reading, when the gypsy is pressing on her bruises, Rose slips into this slow, deliberate way of moving that she used to use in high school when she needed to steal things to survive.
She calls it walking underwater, right?
Yeah, she calls it walking underwater. It's a psychological technique to bore the eye, so people stop paying attention to her. And while the gypsy is distracted by her own dramatic reading, Rose's hands independently decide to steal a hardback book protruding from the gypsy's open handbag.
This is her body remembering survival skills from her youth. The conscious mind is frozen by the reading, but the traumatized body takes action.
Right. And later, when Roe is safely in her car and finally looks at the stolen book, she sees It's a copy of The Eyes of the Dragon by Stephen King, and it's covered in a clear plastic library duster.
A very mundane detail.
But she opens it, and inside, stamped in faded black ink, are the words, "Property of the West Branch Berkeley Public Library." The illusion shatters. Her mother isn't a mystical, nomadic wanderer full of magic. She's a woman who checks out fantasy books in California.
But the mother also left a deliberate physical breadcrumb trail, didn't she?
Yes. During the reading, the gypsy had aggressively insisted Roe visit Cadillac Ranch. For those who don't know, it's this famous art installation of half-buried classic Cadillacs covered in thick layers of spray paint just off the highway outside Amarillo.
It's always getting painted over.
Constantly being painted over by tourists. So Roe drives out there in the freezing, howling wind, desperately searching the spray-painted cars, and hidden under fresh layers of neon graffiti, right underneath the words sex, drugs, rock and roll, Anna Roe finds a specific message painted in metallic silver.
And what does it say?
It says, "I did love you, Rose. Pray to Saint Cecilia."
Let's analyze the psychological impact of that specific message. Focus on the phrasing, I did love you. Past tense.
It is absolutely devastating. Rose's reaction isn't relief. It is pure, white-hot fury. She sees it as a smug, empty, cowardly invitation.
Because it's too little, too late.
Her mother left her behind to absorb the escalating physical abuse of her severely alcoholic father, saving only herself. To Roe, the mother is the true hanged man of the tarot deck, someone who made a selfish, permanent choice to survive at the cost of her child.
She left her to be the lightning rod.
Roe thinks of herself as an acceptable casualty, the collateral damage of her mother's escape. She is so angry at this silver message that she literally smashes a glass Coke bottle against the side of the buried Cadillac.
The mother's reappearance is a massive catalyst. It forces Roe to confront the reality of her abandonment, but it also triggers the deeply suppressed memory of the other pivotal figure from her childhood,
Right.
the one she truly considers her foundational loss.
Jim Beverly, her childhood sweetheart. Remember, Roe threw Jim's name at the gypsy during the reading, claiming he was the loss represented by the tower card. And we have to look at Jim because his relationship with Rose Mae is complex, dark, and incredibly visceral.
It starts very young.
There is a specific flashback scene in the woods behind their elementary school in Alabama. They are just 9 years old. Jim wants to play a childhood game of show me yours. He turns his back, drops his shorts, and shows his bare backside.
It's innocent, childish curiosity.
But when it's Rose Mae's turn,
Yeah.
she doesn't drop her shorts, she doesn't show her backside.
She lifts her dress to reveal her torso.
She lifts her dress to show a skinny rib cage and a belly entirely covered in fresh, dark, mottled bruises. Black, yellow, and purple welts from where her alcoholic father has systematically beaten her.
It is a moment of profound, terrifying vulnerability and shared trauma, and Jim's reaction is vital. He doesn't recoil in horror. He doesn't run away.
He stays.
He reaches out and gently touches the bruises. He validates her pain, and in doing so, he becomes the sole witness to her hidden reality. At 9 years old, they form an unspoken, ironclad pact of secrecy.
And as they grow up, that pact evolves into something much darker. There was another memory Roe has of being 14 years old. She and Jim are sharing a stolen bottle of cheap whiskey by a campfire deep in the Alabama woods.
Alcohol changes the dynamic.
The alcohol hits Jim differently than it hits her. It strips away his boyishness and brings out this cold, capable, terrifying darkness in him. His eyes get hard and shiny in the firelight. And he leans in and whispers to 14-year-old Rose Mae that he could sneak into her house that very night.
He makes a horrific offer.
He says he could smother her father with a pillow while the man is passed out drunk. He looks at her and says, "I could finish him for you. Do you want me to make him quit?"
He is offering her lethal salvation. At 14, he is willing to commit patricide for her.
And reading this, I am just shocked. It's like Jim is offering her the ultimate twisted, Southern Gothic fairy tale rescue. He's not offering to take her away on a white horse to a castle. He's offering to be her personal, devoted hitman.
It's an extreme form of devotion.
He is laying out murder on a picnic blanket for her. But what gets me is her reaction. She refuses him. She gets physically sick. She throws up the whiskey, and she realizes she doesn't want him to be a killer. But here's my question for you. If she was so horrified that she refused him then, why does she fixate on him now? Why does Jim Beverly become the ghost that haunts her entire adult life?
Because of what saying yes would have cost and what saying no ultimately meant. Roe realizes, even at 14, that allowing Jim to kill her father would have permanently destroyed Jim's soul.
It would have ruined him.
The author symbolizes this beautifully the next morning. They find a dead, violently mutilated cat in the woods. Jim is deeply horrified and saddened by the sight of it, which proves to Rose Mae that he is not inherently a monster. He is a good boy.
But the whiskey makes him capable of bad things.
But the whiskey and his love for her make him capable of monstrous acts on her behalf. She rejects his offer to protect him from the darkness she carries like an infection. But Jim's absolute devotion, encapsulated in his whispered promise, "I'll never unlove you," that becomes her ultimate psychological anchor in a world utterly devoid of safety.
So the gypsy was wrong.
Yes. Ro was right all along. The Tower card wasn't her mother leaving. The true foundational loss that shattered Rose's life, the defining tragedy of her existence, was leaving Jim Beverly behind.
Because she had to.
She sacrificed her only source of genuine, unconditional love in order to protect him from the toxic fallout of her own existence.
And for years, for a decade, Ro has kept the memory of Jim and the capable, feral Rose Mae who loved him locked tightly away inside that deepest Russian nesting doll. She buried it to survive, Tom, but the pressure is building.
The volcano was about to erupt.
The dormant volcano of her marriage is rumbling loudly, and it takes just one incredibly trivial, stupid incident to finally shatter the illusion of her Texas life and let Rose Mae out of her cage permanently.
We have arrived at the breaking point of the narrative. This is the transition from passive threat mitigation to active lethal survival.
Let's detail this inciting incident because it is terrifying precisely because of its banality. It's the end of that 6-week honeymoon truce. Tom returns home from the gun store.
This was the day of his big meeting.
This was the day he had his big meeting with his father, Joe. The meeting where he was supposed to demand a raise based on his merit and sales numbers. But instead, as we know, Joe humiliated him and tied the raise entirely to Ro getting pregnant.
And Tom caved.
Tom has accepted this humiliating, emasculating compromise. He walks into the house and Ro can immediately tell he is vibrating with suppressed rage. His eyes are bright with a feverish, looking for a fight anger.
He is a man who has just been deeply humiliated by his father, and he is returning to the only domain on Earth where he holds absolute, unquestioned power. He is actively looking for a trigger to release his tension.
Ro sees it instantly. Her hypervigilance kicks in. She tries desperately to de-escalate. She shrinks physically into the sofa cushions. She speaks in soft, compliant, high-pitched whispers.
She's doing everything she can.
She offers to heat up his dinner. She agrees to keep the house dead silent so he can go upstairs and sleep off his headache. She is playing perfect defense, doing everything right by the abuser's rulebook.
But it's not enough.
Tom turns to leave the room. Ro exhales, thinking the pressure valve worked, thinking she has survived the encounter. But her hands are shaking uncontrollably from the massive adrenaline dump. She reaches out to set her heavy glass Coke bottle down on the wooden end table.
And she misses the coaster.
She misjudges the distance by an inch, and the thick glass hits the wood with a loud, sharp clack.
A sound that perfectly mimics the sharp crack of a gunshot.
A sound that instantly transports Tom mentally back to the humiliation and sheer terror of being shot at in the woods at Wildcat Bluff 6 weeks prior. The fragile 6-week truce evaporates in a millisecond.
The violence that follows is crucial to understand. It is not a loss of control, it is the violent reassertion of control.
It is sheer, unadulterated brutality. Tom wheels around, and the text notes that his face actually shows relief that he finally has an excuse to unleash his rage.
He was waiting for it.
He charges her. He tangles his thick fingers deep into the roots of her long, heavy blonde hair, and he yanks her violently through the air. He is literally swinging her entire body weight by her scalp. He punches her in the back, the hip, the gut.
And this time, she fights back.
Ro tries to fight back this time. She manages to smash the heavy green Coke bottle directly into his face, causing his nose to jet blood over both of them. But the size discrepancy is too much. He is a former college football player.
The physical reality sets in.
Shakes her until she feels patches of her hair physically ripping from her scalp. He throws her against a wall and kicks her with the mechanical force of a jackhammer. He kicks her so hard that a rib cleanly snaps inward and punctures her lung.
Oh, God.
She drops to the floor, stops breathing, and starts making these terrible whooping bird noises as she literally suffocates on the carpet.
This is the culmination of the Two of Swords card the gypsy warned about. The violence is no longer manageable. It is no longer predictable. Her compliance did not save her. The situation has become acutely lethal.
Ro wakes up hours later in the hospital. She's smelling of sharp antiseptic and the yogurt someone left on her tray. She is hooked up to a heavy morphine drip, and she is immediately confronted by an ER nurse who is absolutely sick and tired of Rose's whispered excuses about falling down the stairs.
The nurse sees right through it.
The nurse drops a brutal, necessary truth bomb. She leans over the bed and says, "You married a set of stairs that's too damn big and too damn angry. The next time he'll send you here in a zipper bag, you're going to let him kill you."
The nurse serves as a secular echo of the gypsy's warning. The external world is repeatedly validating the internal reality Ro has tried so hard to deny.
And then the abuser visits. Tom walks into the hospital room. He brings a huge, expensive spray of wildflowers. He has a swollen, bruised nose from where she hit him with the bottle, and he looks at her with what Ro describes as, "Sorry, bad dog eyes."
It's the apology phase again.
He sits by her bed, holds her limp hand, and casually mentions moving forward with the plan, meaning he still expects her to get pregnant to secure his raise, completely ignoring the fact that he just punctured her lung.
It is a grotesque, almost surreal parody of domestic normalcy, occurring while she is hospitalized from his severe beating. It shows the absolute depth of his delusion and entitlement.
But this time, the trauma bond doesn't hold. The cycle is broken. Floating on the icy chips of morphine, looking at Tom absent-mindedly watching a baseball game on the hospital TV, the final shedding of the skin occurs.
The illusion is gone.
Ro Grandi, the pie-baking Texas housewife, officially dies in that hospital bed. She realizes the gypsy was 100% right. It is him or her. And in her mind, she clearly hears the echo of Jim Beverly's voice from the campfire. "I'll never unlove you."
The anchor hold.
She looks at Tom and smiles this glowing, terrifying, vacant smile, completely mentally absent from the room.
The psychological shift is now complete and irreversible. The mask has been discarded. Rose Mae Lolley is fully in control of the system.
And we see the immediate physical manifestation of this shift the moment she is discharged and gets back to her house. Tom goes to work at the gun store. Ro takes a scalding shower, scrubbing herself raw. She opens her meticulously organized closet, looks at the pastel skirts and embroidered sweaters of Ro Grandi, and is utterly repulsed by them.
She can't wear the costume anymore.
She rejects the costume entirely. She digs into the back and pulls out an old, faded T-shirt and worn-out Levi's. But the most significant, symbolic act is what she does to her hair.
The hair is deeply symbolic in the context of abuse. It is the physical tool Tom used to control, drag, and swing her, but culturally it is also a primary marker of traditional compliant femininity.
She marches straight into the kitchen, grabs a pair of heavy meat shears from the butcher block, and without a second thought, violently hacks off her long, thick blonde braid right at the nape of her neck. It falls to the linoleum floor like a dead, glossy snake.
That's a huge moment.
She feels absolutely no remorse, only an incredible sense of lightness.
She is physically and symbolically severing her connection to the victim identity.
But Rose Mae is smart. She knows she can't just walk around town looking like a frantic hack job victim. She needs camouflage for what comes next. So she drives to Artisan.
Artisan.
Artisan is this ultra-high-end, incredibly expensive salon and day spa in Amarillo. It is the exact place her wealthy, oblivious mother-in-law, Charlotte Grandi, frequents.
So she's playing a part again.
Ro walks through the glass doors looking ragged, pale, and crazy, literally holding her severed braid in her fist. And when the impeccably dressed receptionist, a young man named Rexy, asks her in utter shock what happened, she looks at him and says calmly, "My husband died. Quite recently." And she notes that she has to actively fight to keep an inappropriate, massive grin from spreading across her face.
Let's analyze this specific moment at the salon. I pose the question to you. Is she just in shock? Is she trying on the concept of widowhood as a bizarre coping mechanism, or is this a highly calculated move by Rose Mae taking the wheel?
Oh, this is pure, undiluted Rose Mae. I don't see shock here at all. I see a declaration of intent. She is trying on widowhood like you try on a new winter coat because she has fully, completely committed to the reality that Tom Grandi is going to die.
It's a done deal in your head.
It is a foregone conclusion in her mind. She sits in the stylist's chair, looks in the mirror as they fix her hair, and she doesn't see Ro. She sees a girl with kaleidoscope eyes full of pure, naked, crazy. She acknowledges she is looking at the feral girl from Alabama.
And she makes a plan.
And in that chair, she does the math. She knows she cannot physically overpower Tom. She knows her hands shook too much to shoot him herself in the woods. So she resolves to find the one tool, the one person on Earth she knows possesses the cold, unhesitating capability to do the job.
She is going to find Jim Beverly. She is leaving Texas to seek out the teenage hitman she left behind in the woods of Alabama.
Exactly. And that brings our deep dive full circle. We have traced an incredibly harrowing, complex psychological journey today.
We really have.
We started with a woman baking a desperate, calorie-loaded apology breakfast right before a botched assassination attempt in the Texas woods. We dug through the traumatic, fragmented memories of a split identity forged in the fires of an Alabama childhood.
We analyzed the toxic, suffocating architecture of an abusive marriage and a family system that commodified her body for a paycheck.
And we witnessed the absolute breaking point, a snapped rib and a collapsed lung that finally resurrected a feral, deeply damaged survivor who was willing to do absolutely anything to reclaim her life.
It is a stark, powerful reminder that human survival mechanisms are incredibly adaptable, but they have absolute limits. When the constructed persona of compliance fails to protect the individual from imminent lethal harm, the core self must resort to extreme measures.
It's life or death.
Rose Mae's emergence at the end of these chapters is not a regression into madness. It is a necessary evolution necessitated by the imminence of her own death.
It's a terrifying, messy, but ultimately undeniable kind of empowerment. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to chew on as you go about your day.
Something to think about.
We all compartmentalize to some degree. It's human nature. Think about the masks you wear in your own life to keep the peace. The compliant persona you put on to manage a difficult, irrational boss, or to appease a demanding family member, or just to survive the exhausting grind of your daily responsibilities.
And I'll do it.
Now, ask yourself, what kind of extreme, sustained pressure would it take for your carefully constructed mask to permanently crack? And if you were ever pushed to the absolute life-or-death edge, and you finally had to let your own inner Rose Mae out of her cage just to survive, would you ever be able to put her back?